And now we will go to the next lecture. Sorry, but the sound is not reaching the booth, and I cannot. I cannot translate because the sound is not reaching me. He is introducing the next lecturer, but I'm not able to listen to what he is saying. I don't hear. And sorry, on the one hand, well, now, good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers and the GVIC Association for selecting this proposal and giving us the opportunity to present the results of the monitoring team for threatened flora. You see the list here in the lower part of the presentation. And I would like to introduce the menaces for the flora due to lack of knowledge. We start with the presentation, and I would like to say that the plants are a diverse world which is far from the champions of biodiversity, which are invertebrates and fungi, with figures which are astronomical, both in the number of known species and in the number of species that we think still exist in the planet. We are working with a reduced group when we work with plants, but we have 320,000 species. The variation is in the number of knowledge. About 85% of the species are well-known species, which have been classified and typified. Some of the advantages of being attached to the floor is that we can work better with them. If we are next to the Mediterranean shore, this area that covers our territory is one of the areas with a high number of species, what is known as hotspots in biodiversity. This is shared with other areas of the planet, as well as this period and in connection with the low availability of water is what has acted in favor of the differentiation of the species. The area of California, Central America, Australia, or the southern end of Africa, all of them are areas which have a high degree of biodiversity. Regarding our basin or our diversity, then we would see that our biodiversity represents about 10% of the biodiversity of the planet. If we focus on the Iberian Peninsula, and especially for the Valencian flora, the last compilation, which belongs to last year, has about 30,000 species. Some of them have been described right from its publication. Between well, here we can make the difference between what is explained. About 2,700 are autochthonous. These are plants coming from other territories, and they have been adapted to the land conditions, and they are wild now. And all this diversity is menaced as a result of human activities, and this is multiplied after the 18th century with the Industrial Revolution, and is increasing until now. In some way, this effect of human activities on the territory is a reason for us so that the interest for characterizing this the concept of biodiversity is an idea which is very familiar to us, but this is very recent. The term is very recent. The people were not concerned about conservation. As far as that was activated, the improvement of the knowledge and the distribution that leads to risk and threats for the preservation of some part of the flora, that leads to a standardization of the flora in order to guarantee the protection of this diversity. In the case of our territory, the protection of the threatened flora is governed by a decree which has been modified in 2013 as a consequence in order to adjust the protection measures on the species after the deep knowledge that we had from this flora. This information about this, we have populational and chronological information about the chronological the chronological situation. These are plants which are known in our mountains, in our coasts for many years, but which are not present in any other area of the planet, only in the Valencia region. Here we have the situation as endemic plants, and these are some of the endemic plants like the ojo de perdiz, Silene declinis, or the Irta saladilla, which is Limonium perplexum, and the Jara de Cartagena, which is known with one species only, Cistus heterophilus. Although there are some hybridations with other plants, so the only species in Europe could be ours in that case. Also, the silene of IFAC. And when the competences in flora and fauna were transferred to the regional government has to be in charge of the protection of those species, which would be the case for the IFAC silene. So in this situation of knowledge of species, we have information which is not precise.
Amenazadas, fundamentalmente con el objetivo de actualizar y concretar su información demográfica y geográfica, su información sobre la distribución en nuestro territorio. Gracias a esto, con toda la información recopilada,
we have managed to set up which list of species, what set of species are going to need specific protection plans, and also what is their degree of threat, and how much protection are they having, what level of protection do they need within the categories which the decree lays down, which are the ones we are looking at here, which you can see in the slide. And we've got 125 species in the category of protected ones, which make up the catalogue in Valencia, and the two other categories which have a lower protection. For the catalogue, all the information which has been gathered from the point of view of population, the number of examples, distribution along the territory, threats which have been detected on them, and how to apply conservation. All of this was gathered in 2009 in this book, which is indicated here on the slide. After this, with the declaration of the decree, which I commented before the legislation, we set up officially the program to follow the flora which has been threatened here in the Valencian Community region of Valencia, in order to maintain the knowledge through the evolution of these populations, and especially to locate an exhaustive location of where we can find the examples of each of these threatened species. At least 125 make up part of this catalogue, because they're the ones which have got a certain amount of threat, which are higher threat and real possibilities of dying out. And the programme also contemplates the prospection in the territory in order to localize new populations in the territories which, due to their characteristics, are susceptible to housing some of these species which are being catalogued or classified. Or we have information which can indicate that at a certain time there is a presence of the species in a particular area. And at the moment, when we set the follow-up, the monitoring through, we didn't know exactly the species, but we do have some information. There was some prior information to say that there could have been a possible presence. So therefore, the results, the outcomes of this monitoring program give rise to a revision of the catalogue, of the species catalogue, which is the one which shows the success which has been reached by this monitoring program, because it accounts for quite a big 25% reduction in the species which are included in this category of maximum protection due to a higher degree of threat. So we've got there are 85 species which are included within this category, 85. All of this information about the number of examples, the demography, and the localization, precise localization, is extremely valuable to be able to set up possible protection measurements which require conservation and to guarantee the continuity of a certain species, to draw up management plans, to lay down procedures, concrete procedures to avoid or to reduce the effects of the threats, etc. But also, they should also be useful to try to avoid the possible bad negative effects which could come from actions or projects which refer to a transformation of the territory and destruction of the habitat. So what would be required then would be tools which could be made available in an effective way to provide all this localization information about the threatened species for the technicians in the administration, because they're the people who are in charge of looking after this, and how to assess these projects when we need to either to discard them or to have corrective measures, compensatory measures, which can minimize the effects of these possible territorial projects. So we're talking about the development of, we need to offer this information to technicians so that they can understand better. You've only got 5 minutes, I'm afraid. Oh, right, well, I'm going to go, very fast. So all this information which my colleague was talking about didn't exist in the past, because we had prior information which was very poor and very fragmented, very imprecise, which would say that perhaps one plant is in a mountain, in a village somewhere. And historically, until the 20th century, this information has been more concreted. We've got better geographical information about it, in the 80s especially. We started to get more and more information with the quadrical and point processes which could define where a particular plant was. But this precision, accuracy, isn't enough for our aims for effective protection of the flora which is threatened in the region of Valencia. So we had the name of the species, the quadrical, the level of above the sea, and a few other elements. And really the information was pretty poor. So gvSIG, we started to mention, to make treasure maps, and we tried to localize. We tried to cartograph and to map with more precision the abundance of these threatened species. Here we're looking at an image cartographed here, which has been mapped. I was just going to put on a slide about these country field work in the mountain, etc. But it would take up 3/4 of the time which is employed on mapping this, so I decided to put a different slide so you can see we're going up towards the water there. Right. We have to digitalize these data, which has been taken in the field data. A lot of these are GPS points which need to be corrected depending on the amount of sensitivity which we have observed while we were actually in situ. We've got points which we understand that they take up a space. In this case, the 3D space and a 2-dimensional map. We have to draw a surface area of occupation. But if we take a look here, it's very suggestive because it depends on the scale. So therefore, it was decided to go to field. Each point would represent a surface, which then we would use a tool to represent on the map. And in this post-productive process, we can see here we've made some buffers also, and we can see it's halfway along the route here. But we know that actually that's not correct and that we would have to correct this. So here we've got spatial data also. We want to integrate this with demographic data, which has also been taken, and field information, or observation, which we've seen in the field. And here's the result, G6 in different areas. But there are areas different because we're quite away from them. Here we can see a little bit better. We can see there's a census for each group of each of the areas, and these are different particular areas within the boroughs. And here we've got the biodiversity, and we've got the website, which we can find this information about the spread of the species, the distribution about the ones that we know about. But it's not accessible, as I've just explained, because it's been drawn up recently. But we take a look inside the administration of Valencia. We've got territorial managers who have been trying to look after not only these protected plants, but to also take a look into all the territory. So we need to find out the presence of these species throughout the territory. Here's how we can see the species, 3 different explorations for a protected species which is endangered. And here we have a zoom on it, which we can see with a tool. We've got different information in these industrial estates. And we've got the name of the species here, the census, the date of census, the name of the location name. At present, this will be the 776, we're calling these monitoring units. We could call them populations of protected species which are threatened in the region of Valencia. In 2010, there were 630 monitored units. 65% were localized, and of those 65%, only 35% of those were mapped, cartographed, as they should be. And in 2015, the monitoring has increased, and we've got 91% which are now localized, and 100% of those have been cartographed, have been mapped, and are now available for the managers in the region of Valencia, in the administration, the local government. And that's all. Thank you very much. Many thanks. Let's go pass the floor now to we'll go for the questions and answers here. Hello, a doubt for Antonio. I'm not sure about the aims of the ELF project. Is it more oriented towards the producers or people who publish data, or to the consumers of this data? Well, in theory, it's for the users. Actually, it's oriented towards the users. But what happens is it's being coordinated by Eurographics, which is it's a consortium of the cartographic European society, isn't it? And we get the idea that perhaps one of their priorities is a geographic role maybe, especially internally, rather than looking towards the users. So yes, I agree with you and what you're saying, that in reality they should be oriented totally towards the users, but sometimes we also include this type of thing, like the role of the geographics. I don't really know if this is the most suitable way to look at things, but that's just the way it is. Does anybody else have any other questions? Yes. We'll look at the Untitled plan. I understood that you've done the georeferencing with a 1996 plan, or you did it? Oh, did you do it with data which is more updated? No, with a cartographing. We use 95,000 rafting and the tutorial. The tutorial is included, which is destined to the introduction of for researchers or for students who are working in history to see that, but they are not very used to these types of techniques. So it's also oriented towards them. So we use the 1996 plan because it's got very good metrics. It would have been a bit more difficult to use different metrics. Does anybody else have any questions? Right. Well, I do actually have some. For Antonio, for example, why do you think you're remaining on your own when you're trying to defend these open spaces? Ah, right. Yeah, good question there. Well, we had the data up until 2007. Not very recently. Not long ago, Portugal has liberated all its information. They've got an open data portal which they've opened up. I don't know. We've got a development and evolution here, which is difficult. Yeah, it's a lot of hard work, and it's difficult when sometimes you've got geographic institutions who've got a position which is a bit preponderous, or there are technical ideas which are who are very bit advanced, or perhaps are used to working in a different way. There are many reasons. But however, the thing is that in Europe, I think that it's a key area in the world for many things, because of the tendency for progress. We're used to work and to the situation, but it's also true that we're freeing geographic data all the time. Not long ago, I said Portugal, but sometime before also, France liberated all its information, and Norway also freed up part of their information. The UK also freed up some of their information. It's essential, this type of information. Great, thank you very much for that. Does anybody else have any other question? Right, well, I've got another one for you here, for Thesario. It's a project in which at least I feel there's an awful lot of work behind this. So what are the main problems that you've come up against? Well, it's hard to identify the elements which are included in the plan. It's not easy to know how to symbolize lines. What does this line mean? We've seen there are symbols which are drawn incorrectly, and there are issues which you say, look, there's nothing I can do. I've got to give up. I also digitalized something, but I realized it wasn't working. And obviously, we need collaboration. Sometimes we just have to give up, I'm afraid, just because we don't know. We don't know how to digitalize something, so we just try and say, well, let's hope it works out. So that's why it's really very open plan to improvement and to share knowledge. You can download Antonio Breca's photograph, which has got 85 megas, and the photography is much better, of course, than sight, and it's got great quality. So I'd invite you to trace them and take a look at them, and then afterwards I'll ask you a few questions. You can ask me about the symbols which I have put down. There are some symbols there which I don't even know what they mean. And my last question is for Simon. It's an extremely interesting chat about the monitoring, the monitoring that you do. But do you know whether there's work being done to minimize, apart from monitoring work? Is there any work being done for minimizing this threat? Yeah, of course, from the administration, everything which is related to for conservation of flora implies monitoring, as well as measures to reduce the impact which these threats could have, either to conservation measures on the habitat itself, on the populations themselves, conservation measures in situ or outside of the habitat, to be able to guarantee that if there's any incident on these populations due to whatever phenomena, anthropic reasons, I mean, for natural disasters, then these populations could in certain cases be very, very reduced in space, and they're very, very easy to localize. So we need to have measures to be able to revert this situation. All the monitoring program should have a program for conservation and for monitoring. In Cartagena, for example, it's critical, isn't it? Yes, in Cartagena, with practical, it's almost finished, because there's one pure species left, example left in all over Europe, which is it's not complayable. It cannot reproduce itself. So the problem is that this could go on for a long time, because there's a taxonomic issue here about whether it's really a subspecies or, well, anyway, at this moment, with the taxonomic values we have, it's recognized as an independent subspecies. The only example in Europe is the one which is here in Valencia. Right, well, if none of you have any more questions, I'd like to say thank you very much to all the speakers here for the work which they are carrying out, for sharing the information, for collaborating. I'd like to say thank you to all of you for being here today, and for those of you who want to eat something just around here, just to tell you that in the menu, in the bar here, we have here, in the cafe, in this complex, you've got €8.90. You have a menu of the day, so I suggest that you use that. And tomorrow will be the co-fraternity gala dinner, and the price is €18 per person. And again, I invite you all to come, to participate in this dinner, in which you need to let us know if you're going to go, so that we can make the corresponding bookings. And thanks again to all of you for listening. And I'd like you to now, I suggest that you continue with the following sessions.